Hello and welcome back to Watercolor Theory. Today I want to talk about photography and taking our regular photos, which are probably too high contrast. They've probably got the whites blown out. A lot of your lighter colors are probably blown out as well. And then the darks, the saturation's kicked up. And today's cell phones are even worse about this. The algorithms are set up to push those extremes on the camera because a lot of people find that more pleasing. But as far as taking and using those for photo reference, sometimes they lack a lot of detail. Now, this is also for when you're in a hurry and you can't paint plein air. Some of the advantages of painting plein air are you're walking around, you're seeing spatial relationships. So you see this tree, and in a photograph, you only see that tree in front of that building. You never see the tree moving as you're moving, and then that spatial relationship spreads out. So there's one advantage. And then your retina opens and closes so quickly that when you're looking at the light, your retina closes up a little bit, so it's not letting in so much light and you can see color. And then when you look into the shadows, your retina opens up and you can see into those, and it quickly moves back and forth. So that's something the camera can't do. It can't select this area and this area. There is a photo, I'll call it a trick. It's called HDR, high dynamic range. And sometimes it works great, but a lot of times it's kind of wonky, especially if you're taking pictures of people. So if those terms are a little off for you, then maybe you haven't done photography. If you've taken any photography, these terms are going to be, you're going to kind of know them. I'm also going to talk about bracketing. It's just different ways to get your future photos, and I've also got a way to salvage some old ones as well. So the first thing I want to start with is, again, plein air is you can see these spatial relationships. Well, what if you're traveling through a town and you see an old building or you see a barn and you want to get your reference? So give yourself a minute, and as you're walking, take a picture where you were inspired, then take a picture the next place, and capturing those, and take a wide angle shot and then a tight shot, like focal point, atmospheric, focal point at, and just kind of mix and match and record in your mind what you want to do, what you want to, and then at the end or the beginning, put it in video mode and shoot a video. And as you're recording, point to the objects, and note, just take note of how your screen and what you actually see look different, and just call it out as you're panning left to right. Record those details into your video for later reference. So you've got still photos and you've got video reference that helps show that. And I say record the video after you've taken the stills. That way you've also kind of processed the shape and form and spatial relationships. So you can say in your video, okay, there's a hilltop behind this church. I'm going to move that over here a little bit to kind of create some drama, bring that angle in. And that's a painting that I'm working on right now, and I'll show you that in this process. So that's for when you're on site, being able to see that. And then taking photos that you've already taken that you maybe can't redo or you want to try to salvage. I have a method for that as well, which you in the software in your phone, you should be able to change exposure and highlights, but you're not necessarily manipulating color. You're manipulating uh, how intense it is, the saturation, but you're not using like an Instagram filter to warm things up or cool things down. You're just pushing the color that already exists. And so we'll go over that for a little bit. And then there's also bracketing. So if those things sound like a pain in the butt to you, another thing you can do is what's called bracketing. Start with an underexposed setting. So I'll show some examples of how to do that as well. But even with your cell phone, you should have pro mode or manual mode where you can set it to underexpose by 1 or 2 stops, and you'll be able to see that in your settings. You'll just slide the little slider back and forth, take a picture underexposed, take a picture properly exposed, and then take one overexposed. The overexposed one is going to show you details in the shadows, or show your camera the details in the shadows. And then you've got one that's kind of mid-range, and then your underexposed one will show details in the sky or in your brighter areas that are probably missing in the properly exposed one. And sometimes when you're working in pro or manual mode, it doesn't have any kind of algorithms that are helping your exposures. So it might look a lot different than what you're used to, and it might not be pushing those colors and things like that. So it's just something to play with. So you just stop and you take an underexposed, properly exposed, and an overexposed, and then you move on, or you can take video notes to kind of tag along with it. And then keep all three of them together, and or all four of them, the three exposures plus the video. And you could make a little folder for those that you can refer to later for that barn that you saw on Route 91 or whatever. So that's where this video is going to go. Now I'm going to switch it to the little picture in picture, and we'll go through some things to show examples of this. Thanks. All right, so this photo kind of got things started for me looking at photo manipulation. And to give credit, this photo was taken by Bryce Olson, and it is available on Unsplash. The thing that was appealing to me about this video was, or is, this the sky, kind of the starkness of it, but seeing the actual color was a little bit difficult. So I pushed the color a little bit by bumping it up. And this was done in Photoshop. So it just brought out a little bit more saturation in the grass, but it also, this green where you're kind of seeing in between the foreground elements. So it's underneath the taller dried out grasses, but that color did also shift the bison a little bit. So it's just giving a little bit, like here's some banding in here of kind of a turquoisey color, and then here's a light blue violet. It's pretty hard to see these colors though. And then I did a color study, and this is a painting that's in progress right now. Now here is just the sky, and you can see down in the bottom, it's there's the shoulder. If I kept the shoulder in this photo, it would have affected the banding of these colors, and that's what I really wanted this to be about. So this isn't like a filter that I used that, like in Instagram, that would warm it or cool it. This is just called Posterization, and the computer is just taking the colors, and this is how it would break it down to for a printing process. I'm not going to go into that, but I used to be a screen printer, and Posterization it was one of the means of printing things that were originally photographic. But I wanted to show this banding of color because this is why I'm doing this. It's finding the lights and recapturing what's not visible in the photograph, and then also doing the same with dark. So this is actually a darkened light, and then in other areas you'll see lightened dark, so you can kind of see the colors that are in the shadows. So let me move on to the next part. So this is more about process, like when you're taking the pictures, whether you're in a hurry or not. If you can put it in pro mode, and then just start with an underexposed, the EV. I don't recall what that stands for, but basically it's underexposed with the -2. And if you can get it to just allow you to, click on that, and then there's a slider that allows you to go darker or lighter. So that one's -2, that's -1. This is a 0 or properly exposed. There it is again. And then here's a +1 and a +2. So looking at this is a way overexposed. You can't see anything back here, but in the trees, now you can pick up some of the colors in there. And then on the darker ones, you can see a little bit, that's a little too underexposed to be of much use. But then this one, you're kind of seeing different, greens that are a little bit more blown out in this one. So it just helps find the colors that might be missing. They're not, as long as they're not totally gone, as long as it didn't go totally black or totally white. So now this one, I believe, let's see, so this one's the properly exposed, just what the camera wants to do in its normal setting. And then here it is, slightly modified. And the things I want to show in here is there's some things I noticed that I wouldn't have noticed before. In pushing the colors, let me see if I've got another photo of it. Well, that's a different section. So in pushing these colors, I was able to see blues here. And I'm like, well, that's not the sky. What is it? And so this is the leaves, the waxy coating on the leaves, reflecting a blue in the sky. So you don't want it as bright as a sky hole, but it's definitely affecting it. So in watercolor, I mean, maybe there's just a little bit of a wash that has, um, just a little drop of blue here or there, or maybe if you can get like manganese or a regular cobalt blue to, no, cobalt might be a little dark, but if you had a little bit of manganese in with green, maybe it would granulate and leave little patches there. Or if you are an acrylic or oil painter, just knowing that there's a couple of spots of blue here and there, and then like you can see it here where it pops out over that green. So it really stands out in those areas. And then over here, just seeing, it goes from this green to just a line of orange, and then it gets really kind of brownish, just bringing out those, different colors. And sometimes when these photos are manipulated, they're not going to be of use. They're going to be, it's too garish. But it's showing you what, you can hint at rather than the photo. Now, this one isn't pushed too extremely hard, and this wasn't a horrible photo to begin with. It was just, I walked outside this morning and just started taking pictures for this video. It's not so much about composition. It's just about the photo reference. So then the next one is adjusting the light balance and highlights. So first with the light balance, going lighter, going darker. It's a little bit different than exposure. I don't know how to describe it, but I find that I like using light balance better, more, I guess would be the word for, than using exposure. And then this is highlights. So what it's doing is I went minus, I just turned it down all the way, and it took all of the shadows, or excuse me, all of the highlights and and only underexposed those. So it made the highlights a little bit darker in that one. It's hard to tell that here it is white, and it goes a little bit gray. And then the next one is the saturation. I really bumped that up, and those blues that I was showing you earlier are really popping out in this. And then this one, the light balance, I went back to 0, and then I went minus 100. And so that really, that has a better range, looks more like the photo. And then circled around where those highlights are. This is with the saturation cranked up to light balance. So it's giving you little tidbits, Easter eggs, whatever, little bits of treasure. I mean, obviously you don't want to use this color palette, but if you're a colorist, or if you're having trouble seeing these colors, if you're out in the wild, out in nature, and you're having difficulty, this might help you. This might leave clues for you to then seek out this information. And again, this is all backlit. So behind this tree, it's capturing the blue sky above. So that's why it's getting these blue leaves. That's all just reflection. So if this can be as a training tool so you can see these things when you're out in nature, it's great. I'm not suggesting that this is a crutch, but sometimes you just get a bad photo and you need to work, manipulate it as much as possible. There's that sky again. The banding of the colors, you've got a little bit of a green here, and then you've got kind of a dusty mauve. And so a lot of these colors are the same values, but there's these color shifts. And on a smaller scale, or if this was further back, you would, it would kind of optically, your eyes would blend it. And so this is broken color, basically. It's taking, what, your eye is going to turn into a gray with a little bit of a yellow halo. It's going to mix all these colors. Then as you get closer, it's like, oh, wow, that's not what I expected. So, and that's again with those bison. Oops, that's not supposed to be there. Let's see. Oh, I guess I reached the end of that folder. Okay, so I'm going to close that and then go to, I'm going to go back to this manipulated bison one first, because it is, um, again, you go up in here and you can just kind of see this banding where it was in the other photo. So let me see if I can get that to show up. There we go. There we go. So you can see, it's taken all of this and pulled that bit of information out of it. So you've got a green and then kind of a grayish green with some violet in there, and then you've got this violety mauve again. I should call that violet. There's a blue, just all these different colors, and it's just what Photoshop could find. It was taking averages of colors and making them into one. So there's all this variation in here, and it's such soft transitions you can't see it. So I used Photoshop to really push it hard and just help with finding these colors. So that was the objective on that. I'll close that one too, and now I'll open this. So this one's number 2, file number 2. Let's see. So this one is the manipulated photo. I put them in a specific order, so I know that this one's manipulated, this one's not. So this looks, after looking at it with the bright colors, it seems like this one's a little bit off, but this is the quote unquote more natural colors that the camera picked, and then this is everything boosted. Now, obviously, you wouldn't probably want your colors to be this bright throughout. So you've got the bright everywhere, you've got the more natural, and then this one, you can kind of see the lines here. I cut it out in Photoshop so that the desaturated or the natural colors are on the top and the bottom, and then it gets brighter as you go to the center. And then I just didn't feather it very much, so you can kind of see where so you could get, if you have Photoshop and you want to do that kind of stuff, but this is just an idea of, okay, I'm going to really boost my colors in the center so that those really draw the attention. And then over here, I'll have, maybe, you've got these more subdued colors. They're going to be darker because they're in the foreground, but your eye is going to be drawn to this candy in the center. And then the next one, this is a farm just a few miles down the road from where I live. And then here it is boosted. So there's not really a lot of color that we're seeing in there, but this is something, again, where you could, go either way with this. You could have your grays in the center and then have the grass here, like this is a new day, that, nature is always rebuilding, but, you're making a statement that this, house is, the house is still lived in. It's not like it's falling over or anything. It's been modernized, but, you could manipulate colors in the opposite direction where you've got, color here to, just show that, this is alive, and then make that gray to show that it's the past or, whatever. Getting a little off topic there. So this is just some Indian paintbrush, and then there's the color boosted again. This is at a corner, so it's just right at the corner of a field. And again, just manipulating your colors, having everything in the background more muted. And this is really just very standard, just bumping up the saturation. But like I said, darkening your highlights and then lightening your shadows in your phone or in Photoshop. So dropping down your highlights. So you're basically, instead of increasing contrast, you're decreasing contrast, and then you're increasing color, mainly to see into the shadow areas and the brighter areas better. This one's a little bit more manipulated, where it really kind of separates it out. Everything's got a little bit more punch, but this one's definitely, you can see more benefits out of it than you can the other one. Now this one's just a straight up field that I took a picture of. I didn't do the center part, but pushing those colors, getting, a feel for what you could have in there. And then again, going with broken color, you could have this color, going over a little bit, less saturated color. So along this line, or wherever you want to draw attention, if there's the storm, and if you want to have like a couple of little rays of light, hitting this ground as the storm's rolling in or whatever. So these photos are more about really finding what's living in the shadows and the highlights. So this is, I'm pretty sure this one is not manipulated. It's just very bright. It just goes from this manganese up to cobalt blue. And then, it's kind of hard. I see a little bit of warmth in here. The shadows are kind of hard to see, what's lurking in them. And then here I boost them up. And now you can see, you could go really turquoisey here and then get a little bit more of a warm blue on the top with ultramarine or cobalt. But then in the shadows, you can really see. And again, this isn't a filter to warm it up or whatever, but it's just boosting up the colors that already exist. It's darkening the shadows, darkening the highlights, lightening the shadows so that you can see some of these things. And I compare this to a Maxfield Parish, which is what I'm shooting for. I'm actually painting this church, but not at this angle, and I'll put in a Maxfield Parish as well, just for those who maybe aren't familiar with his work. But from this angle, you're seeing there's a little bit of the red roof, reflecting off of that. So there's a little bit of a reddish color here. It's really, this is yellow, but it was in, semi in shadow. So when I bumped up the saturation, it turned it more of a deep, an orangish color, deep yellow. So there's that. So in the beginning, I talked about, shooting video or taking multiple pictures as you're walking around. So you see this ridge over here, and this is very close to the angle that I'll be painting this picture. But what I want is, I like the tree here, but I want to bring the hill up higher. The vantage point from my photo is more like where this pole is. So the mountains actually disappear. So I'm bringing those in, adding a look of, I guess, scale and drama to it. And then the next one, I think, is the video of me doing the walk here. Let's check that out.
So move these trees over where that shed is, and then maybe have that ridge line intersect the church a little differently. Haze in the background. Definitely have a difference in color. You can see the light coming down through the trees at an angle. That might be hard to capture.
All right, so that's just a brief, little video recording that I would do, just of what what my kind of game plan is as I'm out in the field. You're just seeing a lot more information, and that's, again, one of the disadvantages of painting only from photos is you don't know what else is there, so you have to kind of search for it. And okay, can I make this sense? Whereas if you're walking around, you can see what makes sense, and you can really do a composition before you even take your actual reference photo. So the next slide, this is of a farm not far from that church. All of these photos are pretty close to each other. So there's regular exposure, overexposure, or here's the regular. And so if if messing with the software sounds like a pain, you can see in this one, here's where the highlights are really hitting, but you're not seeing any of that detail in there. So the next photo, it's overexposed, and we can really see in there, like, there's all the lichen growing on there. So just getting a swatch of a bit of a grayish green, and then a reddish brown, just colors that are all very similar in value, and having broken color in there, so it adds visual interest rather than it being just this one big solid blob of a wall. So that's the proper exposure. And again, if you go in there, you can see, I mean, I'm not suggesting you paint details, but if you're a watercolorist, you put in a big shape there, and then you do another shape adjacent to it where it's just slightly darker, maybe slightly warmer, and maybe this one's greener. Whatever works for you. You don't want it to be too green though, where it's starting to look like shrubbery. So, but it just helps you see texture doing three exposures in a row. This one is just at my apartment. It's a mundane photo, but if you look at this gravel and then the light, the dappled light coming through, if we bump that up, you can see like suddenly there's a lot of color in here. It really warmed it up. You can see where the light comes down. It's much brighter in the center, and then there's a halo that's kind of a little bit orangish. And this is in comparison to that. This is almost like fruity pebbles. It's got just a really bright, really lively appearance. So, some granulating colors for watercolorists, and then a little dappled light. Or if you're an oil painter or an acrylic painter, you just put a little bit of a grayish blue on one tip of your brush, and then a little bit of orangish brown, but very similar in value on the other side. And you just kind of put it in there. Let make it easy on yourself with that brushwork. Let's see. And that looks like that's it for all of those. So I hope I touched on everything. I realized that some of this things as far as manipulating photos is a little bit difficult. And you might look into, whoops, I don't want the video again. You might look into your photo or into your camera, or go online at YouTube and see if there's a way to do the bracketing automatically. Like in my camera that I shoot my videos with, it does have that bracketing function, but I don't ever bring it with me anywhere because it's just so easy to carry the cell phone. I'd rather just look. And then the other thing is with doing it manually is you can decide, like on this photo, this might have been -1 rather than -2. Whereas if you tell the camera to auto bracket, you're kind of stuck with those settings until you change them. So this way, I just go in, open it up, move the slider until I've kind of like obscured the darkest areas, or until I'm really seeing the light areas. I'm not blowing any of that out. And then I have a blown out one, and then the final. So I hope this video has been helpful. I want to try to do some things like this where it's maybe thinking outside of the box a little bit, where you're um, just thinking, instead of thinking, oh, I don't have any time to take photos. Well, I do. I can get out of the car. I can take 3 or 4 photos as I'm walking, shoot a video, take a final photo, and then go get back in the car and drive. So less than a minute or two. Or if um, if you're nervous about plein air painting, going to a site, taking the pictures, do your drawing at home, and then go back the next day, early in the morning or late at night, and capture that golden hour. Have your drawing out of the way, but plan it out through your photographs. What are you going to lose? Like lose this post, and then maybe and lose that post, and then spread these. Have this one here, and maybe that one there, and the other two are gone. It's just an implied, but they kind of break up this. Whatever you want to do, or you manipulate it so it's like that, more sky, um, but just taking that time to get better quality reference. It's not necessarily about better quality photos. It's you're combining 3 photos to get the reference you need. So I feel like I've probably gone on a little too long. This is approaching 26 minutes, and I already recorded a little bit. So hopefully my droning on didn't bore you. Thank you for tuning in, and please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done that already. Thank you.